You're listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey are sad about the end of summer and want to go beat up the ocean.
Is that relatable or is that relatable?
I mean, we're literally recording this at the beginning of September, and it is the most relatable.
Today was chilly when I took the dog out for a walk.
I know. I was like a little cold this morning when I woke up. It's really sad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pro fall, and now that I'm not a teacher anymore, the end of summer is a little different for me than it is for you. But when do classes start for you?
Tomorrow.
So this is really appropriate. It's funny because obviously I think of this as a summer episode, but it really is about the end of summer.
It's about melancholy and memory and friendship.
Oh, so you're telling me we watched Pete and Pete.
We watched Pete and Pete, and I'm Jodie, and that's Andrea.
And that's Pete and Pete in a nutshell.
Yeah. And Michael Stipe, who I did not know was in this.
Jodie, the list of, I
checked out the list of guest stars
in this episode. Yeah. Kate Pearson from B-52s is the blind billionaire or millionaire neighbor.
Who almost bought a piece of mine a few years ago. But then
Is that true?
Yeah. She lives she lived, I think she still does, live up in the Hudson Valley. And she saw a piece of mine at Open Studios one time when I was at a residency and wanted to buy it, but it was apparently too big for her space.
That's so cool, though.
I know. I wish she'd bought it. I would have given her a very big discount had she asked. Mm-hmm. But yes, lots of guest stars in this show. We watched, if you didn't hear the end of last week's episode, we watched 2 episodes of Pete and Pete. We watched What We Did on Our Summer Vacation and A Hard Day's Pete, because Andrea couldn't decide which one we should watch.
Part of why will be much more clear next week, but if you had to pick one of the two right now, without the context of next week's episode, which you have not seen yet, what we'll be covering, which would you have picked, do you think?
Just to watch for fun or for the conversation?
Yeah, for the conversation. If I had said, I'm stuck between these two, can you watch them and pick which one? Which do you think would have been more appropriate so far?
I think probably the summer vacation one, but only because they both have aspects that make sense to me. The summer vacation one was a bit more surreal. It was a bit more detached from reality, where so was Hard Day's Pete, but it had a more straightforward XYZ happening. This is more why are they trying to find this guy? Why do they want to be friends with him?
Because they don't want him to be lonely.
I know, but it felt more like a trip. An acid trip than the first one, than Hard Day's Pete. Even though that felt a little acid trippy, this was definitely more so.
I think Pete and Pete in general has this kind of surrealness to it. It's very grounded in its own reality, I would say. Everybody is accepting of how strange this world is, but nothing is questioned. That's the thing. Exactly.
It's Pete has a tattoo of a woman on his arm. He's a child. He has Artie. None of these there's just so much random shit that's so far from reality that happens that is accepted at face value.
Yeah, in any other show, Artie's a great example. He would be little Pete's imaginary friend.
Yeah.
He's a guy in the neighborhood.
Yeah. He's his personal superhero, the strongest man in the world.
He calls them his little Vikings.
Yeah. None of this is tied to reality in any real way other than that they're two brothers living in suburban New Jersey. Even though it's not technically New Jersey, it's filmed in New Jersey and it's clearly New Jersey.
So let's back up a little bit. Let's do some scene setting. One of the reasons I think that what we did on our summer vacation does feel even stranger is, so to start, Pete and Pete started in the late 90s as a series of really short interstitials on Nickelodeon. Right. So a minute long. You can find some of them on YouTube. And they were made by, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes from 2, I thought they were really great books. One is called Slimed, An Oral History of Nickelodeon's Golden Age by Matthew Klickstein, and then one is the Nickelodeon 90s cartoons, game shows, and a whole bunch of slime by Chris Morgan. So a lot of my research comes from those 2 books. And
you really need a PowerPoint for this. Where's your PowerPoint, man?
I know.
We just talked about PowerPoints for an hour.
I would love our podcast to be a video podcast, but
with
it's
PowerPoint slides.
Just PowerPoints. That would
maybe that's our final
Jodie.
form.
Ooh.
I know.
That's when we launch the Patreon. Every episode,
yeah,
will come with a PowerPoint.
Yeah. The thing we discovered this morning, not to interrupt you, is that we have very different PowerPoint slide styles. Andrea's is very fun and very jokey and like entertaining and lots of like bright colors, and mine is very like photographer, black background, white text, like, you know, very clean layouts, very controlled. So, in case you were wondering.
Nobody's surprised at either of those things. That mine looks like they were made in a circus, and yours looks like it was made in the basement of a very respectful library. And I think that's good for both of us.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. So they started as these little shorts. If you watched Nickelodeon in the 90s, like Inside Out Boy is another example of these weird little... And they were made... And it was created by Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi, who were apparently in the like promo department or whatever for Nickelodeon. And so these little 1-minute shorts, people really liked them. And then that turned into a series of specials, these little half-hour specials. And that's where what we did on our summer vacation comes from. Mm-hmm. So you'll find it folded into season 1, but it was actually released before they even knew the show was going to go to series. Mm. And so I think that's why it can be a little more strange, because they weren't anticipating it being built into anything. Not that Pete and Pete is very linear in general, but they were like imagined as being these little, just this little series of specials.
Which in some ways makes it crazier how big of a swing it is in terms of like just not caring about like sticking to what a kid's show normally would be or would sound like, or would...
It's so different.
It's like, it's just every other line that you're just like, wait, what? Like,
I think...
Also, I have to say this, nobody other than our shared New Jersey as a World listeners are going to care, but I immediately thought of Gath when I saw The Strongest Man in the World. Artie.
That's Toby Huss. And Toby Huss... I don't know why. Here's the thing. Because I grew up with Pete and Pete in my veins, I've never really done a deep dive because I already feel like an expert, even though there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
I thought for some reason in my head, and maybe I heard a story somewhere, I thought the actor who played Artie hated being Artie and just stopped acting after that. I have no idea why I thought that. Because, Jodie, I'll have you know, Toby Huss has been acting... He's one of those guys, you know how I always say, like, we've got
he's in like Law and Order, CSI, like every show, Bones.
He's in, exactly. But also in stuff like he's Emily Dickinson's dad in Dickinson. Like, he's a big...
Oh, I know his face as an adult.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was in hold on, Halt and Catch Fire. That's what I know him from.
He's in 19 episodes of Reno 911. I mean, if you look at his list of... He's in 5 or 6 things every year. Like, consistently from Pete and Pete on.
Yeah.
He never stopped working. And when I mean, like, literally every single year he is in 3 to 5 projects. It's really impressive.
Oh, he was also in Glow.
Yeah, he's in a million things. He's in everything. Like, it is
he really
wild.
Is.
I just didn't realize that was Toby Huss.
Yeah. I watched all of Halt and Catch Fire, and that's where I recognize him from.
So you know him. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's in... I know I keep saying this, but yeah, 40 episodes of Halt and Catch Fire. He's in 2 episodes of Veep. He's Cordy Sturgis, whoever that is. He's in 2 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He was a voice in Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, he's a few voices, I think. He's also Khan and Cotton Hill in King of the Hill. Yeah, he's in 7 episodes of Venture Brothers, which is a Jersey cartoon.
It's wild how drastically different.
Yeah.
When you think about the character he played in *Halt and Catch Fire*, everyone in that show is so serious all the time, no matter what. And it's just such a like intense drama. And he's like gritty and like kind of tough, if I remember correctly, in that. And then he's in fucking Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and Reno 911, and Balls of Fury as the groundskeeper, and 30 Rock, and just all of these crazy...
in everything. He's one of those guys. In Dickinson, I mean, his whole... you said you haven't watched Dickinson, right? I feel like you would like Dickinson, I think. But yeah, he plays Emily's dad, who is the whole point of him is that he's very repressed and he's loving, but, reserved. And
he was in one episode of The League as Flanagan, the drug dealer.
See what,
yeah. Very, very opposite ends of the spectrum.
And varied career.
Yeah. He was in an episode of Garfunkel and Oates.
Yeah.
What? Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
I will also have you know that Don Wrigley, Pete and Pete's dad, 40 years old.
In this show?
In this show, 40 years old.
Oh, God. He looks like he's 65.
Yeah, he's a year and a half older than me.
Wow.
So.
Wow, they made him look really old.
I don't know if they did. Also, his name is Hardy.
Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Hardy Rawls, which is a great name. Hardy Rawls. Mostly Pete and Pete. He was in an episode of Judging Amy. He was a voice in Daria. He was in an episode of Ed, episode of Law and Order.
Couple different Law and Orders.
Yeah, and then from 2005 to 2020, nothing. And then he was in it looks like a Christmas movie called USS Christmas, which now I am desperate to see. What a good title. And then this year he's in an episode of a show called Bad Monkey. So not,
I think it's a Hallmark Christmas movie. USS Christmas. Yeah. Maddie, a reporter for a Norfolk newspaper, embarks on a tiger cruise during Christmas time. What's a tiger cruise? Where she meets a handsome naval officer and stumbles upon a mystery in the ship's archive room.
Incredible.
USS Christmas. Yeah. Looks like it's a Hallmark production.
Good for him. Judy Graff also, who plays Pete and Pete's mom, who plays Joyce, which is Buffy Summers' mom's name. It's a very good mom name.
It is a good mom name.
She also 29 episodes of Pete and Pete, and then an episode of Judging Amy and an episode of Untold Stories of the ER. So, really kind of all over the place. Who else should we, while we're working through? I want to save the music cameos for later, but in terms of the band
that does the opening and everything.
Oh, Polaris.
Yeah, Polaris.
Miracle Legion is their actual... Well, that's not true. Mark Mulcahy, I think is his name.
Yes, that is his name.
Is the frontman of that band. And I think Polaris is some members of it, if I remember correctly. But Polaris is they also do the theme song, Hey Sandy. And they do the song from Hard Day's Pete. And then also, they were kind of, again, I don't know what single cam children's show has a house band, but Polaris was their unofficial house band. So much of the music from Pete and Pete comes from this band.
It's also a very Gethard show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to see the direct...
of course, yeah.
The DNA. And then, Michelle Trachtenberg, Allison Finelli is the name of the person who plays Big Pete's best friend.
Heather Matarazzo.
Ellen. What's that?
Heather Matarazzo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who is not from New Jersey, even though she feels very Jersey. We looked her up.
Yeah.
And then Mike Moran and Danny Tamborelli, obviously Big Pete. And Little Pete.
I was just looking at a little bit about Polaris, and it says, describing itself as the band that lives in your TV, the members of Polaris took on quote-unquote TV names. Mulcahy was Muggy, Boutier was Jersey, and McCaffrey was Harris Polaris.
You'll also know Big Pete as one of the siblings from the Home Alone movies. And then Danny Tamborelli, who has been... he, after Pete and Pete, he was Nickelodeon, one of their kind of darlings. So after the adventures of Pete and Pete, and then also you would know him if you were a Mighty Ducks obsessive like I was. He was Tommy on Mighty Ducks.
Babysitter's Club.
He's also he was the voice of Arnold in Magic School Bus. But then for Nickelodeon, he was one of the lead contestants on Figure It Out. If you ever watched that show, you were definitely too old for it. I was almost too old for it. But they would bring on somebody a person in real life who had some sort of secret talent or weird quirk or was a world record holder. I remember they had the girl who had the longest name on, and then they had to figure out what their thing was. And then he was in all that. He was one of the leads of that. But then he's done a ton of stuff since then. He's also Jimmy DeSanta, apparently, in Grand Theft Auto.
My favorite fact from his Wikipedia is that he is also a founding member of the sketch comedy group Man Boobs.
I love Danny Tamborelli.
Which is such an improv sketch group name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also the frontman for the band, the Blowholes, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the rock band, like in real life, Jounce, formed in northern New Jersey.
Yep. He is so North Jersey.
He is. I know. I listened to him on New Jersey is the World and was like, that accent.
Yeah.
And it's not even that strong of an accent, but it's like so specifically recognizable to me.
Mm-hmm. Also worked in a bagel shop in North Jersey.
Raised in Maywood and Wyckoff, went to Ramapo High School. Like, come on.
Yeah. And so, interestingly, the creators of the show are not from New Jersey, but like it was filmed in Jersey. It feels so New Jersey.
Yeah. Will McRobb is from New York City. I don't know if he was born there, but it says he's from. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was born in New York City. And Chris Viscardi does not say.
So
where was he born? Fact. New York City. They're both from New York City.
Okay.
I bet that there are those New York City people that, like, I'm guessing, moved to Jersey when they got too old to deal with the nonsense.
Yeah, I truly have no idea.
Yeah.
But the show is just so Jersey. Filmed all over North Jersey, specifically all over Bergen County.
Yeah, filmed in Leonia. Was it Bayonne High School?
Bayonne High School. That's right.
Cranford, Wayne. It's so funny. I wrote down,
South
and I
Orange.
didn't know this, but I wrote down, and I don't know if it's in the summer vacation episode, but the phone.
I was going to quiz you
the
on
photo kiosk.
I was going to ask you if you recognized where that kiosk is.
Well, so what I realized, because it looked extremely familiar, I looked it up, and it's I don't know if it is the Willowbrook Mall, but I know they filmed at the Willowbrook Mall.
It's the parking lot of the Willowbrook Mall.
Which is the mall that we would go to on Sundays, because in Bergen County we have blue laws where nothing is allowed to be open on Sundays. So you have to go to Passaic County to go to the mall.
I mean, hold on. You said that like that is normal. I need you to slow down and just really explain that for our listeners who aren't from, not even just North Jersey, who aren't from fucking Bergen County.
I don't know if I can explain the reasoning behind it. I'm sure that that information exists.
Just say it again slower, I guess, so it can really sink in for people.
It's not something we ever questioned. Bergen County shopping, other than food shopping, is closed on Sundays. So all of the stores that like are in the mall is closed on Sundays. You cannot go to the mall on Sundays. You cannot go to like Barnes & Noble on Sunday.
So wild. What did you people do on Sundays?
We went to Passaic County.
Okay.
We went to the Willowbrook Mall, or we went to the Palisades Mall if we were closer to New York. We just went somewhere else.
That's so funny. I was gonna quiz you. I wondered about that. Do you also have a guess? I had a hard time tracking it down. I only found proof of this in one place. But if you had to guess, I don't even know if this is a beach you're familiar with, when they go down the shore, what beach that is.
So it's hard to say, because if they were true North Jersey kids, it would have been Point Pleasant in the 90s. It would have been Point Pleasant, Seaside Heights, Lavalette, or LBI.
Is Lavalette closer to me, though? Isn't Lavalette a little further south? Is that just where you people went?
It's just where us people went, yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was probably, if it was
down south.
If it was accurate, it would be one of those four, but it was probably wherever they could film.
Right.
There's no shots of like a boardwalk or anything. It's just the beach itself, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah. I found some saint did a ton of research and made a map that I will share with you, Jodie, but you're going to be too distracted by it. So, but they did make a map, and they have it listed as Seabright.
Okay.
I have no idea where they found that, but everything else seems really accurate, so I have no reason to doubt them, because I don't think they would have mapped it if they didn't know for sure.
Right.
But some places where they filmed, Willowbrook Mall, Seabright, Lodi Lanes, Bayonne High School, Veterans.
Lodi Lanes?
Yeah. There's a bowling alley episode with Vincent Pastore, who I listened to on Chaz Palminteri's podcast talk about how his last name, his dad, it's Pastore, but his dad dropped the E because he wasn't getting work. And then Palminteri's like, It's so good. That's Big Pussy, obviously, from Sopranos.
Yeah.
If I'm going to mark every Jersey reference or connection that we have in the show, this episode will be 500 hours.
We're not doing it.
Big Pussy's in an episode of this. Vincent Pastore. Chaz Palminteri asks him. I'm going to put the clip here because it made me laugh out loud.
Okay.
Here he is, Vincent Pastore.
Vincent. It's a pleasure to be up here at your home.
Thank you. Now, how do they pronounce your name? Vincent Pastore. Really?
Well, its real way is Pastore.
Pastore.
But Daddy dropped the E because he couldn't get work.
Really?
Yeah, and he dropped the E. And he said Pastore.
What kind of work did your dad do?
Well, Daddy was a wise guy.
Oh, my God.
The little pause he takes. It's so good.
Look, I've been to Lodi Lanes, I think. I mean, I definitely went bowling in New Jersey a lot when I was a kid. My dad was really into bowling.
So funny. Closter Golf Center? Did I say it right?
You said it right.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Closter. Oh, God, here we go.
It's so long.
It goes on for so long.
It's way too long. Yeah, Closter Golf Center, Hudson County Area Vocational Technical School. The Wrigley House has a few different places in South Orange, Cranford, Nutley.
Right. I almost said Cranston. Cranston is not in Cranston's Rhode Island.
Where else? Belleville. There's a nursery school. Drive-in theater's not there anymore, but in Westbury. South Orange Station. South Mountain Reservation in West Orange.
Nice.
The Orange Avenue Pool in Cranford. Brookside Place Elementary School in Cranford. Cranford High. St. Mary's Parochial School in Nutley. And then, again, the Wrigley House also in Leonia. Again, like I said, a couple of different places across the series. So it is North fucking Jersey.
Which is so funny because, okay, this is not for this podcast. This is for New Jersey's World, but I don't care. I listened to the deep dive that you guys did about Essex Fells the other day, and Chris was like, I can name every town in Essex County, and he started doing it. And I was like, well, Essex County has less towns than Bergen County.
Jodie Gaff.
Famously, Bergen County has like 70 towns.
It's absurd that you guys have 70 towns.
I know. So I was like, how many can I name? And I started writing them down. And my big blind spot is that Closter, Demarest, that area. It's like northeast corner of New Jersey, like in that whole little section there. That's what I always forget. And so this is not a part of North Jersey I'm like super familiar with.
What do you think accounts for that? Because it feels like South Jersey to me, even though I know it's not. And so is it just that it feels too not sophisticated enough for you people to care about it?
No one else can see this, but look at the picture behind me from the town that I grew up in. It's like a falling apart house with like a shitty broken fence.
I mean, the Wrigleys have a huge house, as is the case in all of these shows for some reason.
I will say, I did write in my notes when they had in the opening, when the band is outside, that looks like a North Jersey front yard. Like, not necessarily either of the two towns I lived in. They're both different from that, but that's a type of town in New Jersey or North Jersey that I know. Yeah,
it feels like the suburbs I grew up in, for sure.
It feels more Central Jersey to me, but that's just because I'm being so granular about it.
But yeah, it's definitely filmed very much so in North Jersey.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things, I'm so protective of this show and its Jerseyness because the creators aren't from Jersey, and because the way they describe it, it's 500 miles from the Hoover Dam. We know that because there's a road trip episode where they drive to the Hoover Dam. And also, I forget how far from the Canadian border, but they give it a distance. And so but it's so Jersey. And like when we talked to Danny Tamborelli, I'll link to the episode, highlight of my career.
Yeah.
When we talked to Danny about it, I was like, there are probably a lot of people who think they grew up in a town like Wellsville, but that you're only right if you grew up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just feels so.
Well, and it's also so 90s. Like
it's so 90s.
It's early 90s actually.
Yeah,
and
the shorts started in I think 89.
91 is what I just saw.
The little interstitials I think are 89.
Okay, because I saw
I think they run 89 to 91, and then I think the specials go till 93.
I gotcha. Yeah. That's right. But yeah, there were so many things where I was like, like even just, I know people run through backyards in other states. I sound like such an asshole, but like even the like cutting through the backyards and like it just all felt very. It was also like the suburban landscape and then the giant empty mall parking lot. I was like, with that's the 90s part of it.
Yeah,
those little photo booths. That you could drive through, drop your film off, come back, and pick up that envelope. Like, I have, like, a visceral
totally. When
memory.
he hands her the little slip that he... It's just like, oh, man, so much of it. It's also one of the... So, there's so much... We'll do a plot recap of these, I guess a quick one as we talk through them. But I just want to talk so much more about the vibe and the overall thing and what makes the show so special.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do a beat by beat. I think we can just talk about the general plots.
Yeah. But one of the things is like I said, these guys didn't come. It's like the difference between this and Salute Your Shorts. Steve Slavkin, Salute Your Shorts was based on a book he wrote for kids.
Yeah.
These guys were making weird little interstitials on a weird TV network, and I think they came up in the like New York punk scene, which is one of the reasons music is so important to this show. No other show, like a show like this, doesn't get made as a children's show first and foremost, I don't think.
Well, the music, too, is what made it feel very Jersey to me, because it was like such a specific moment in time and a specific type of music. And it's just not something you hear in television.
No. I mean, the soundtrack is incredible. Before you even get into the cameos, the soundtrack of the show is incredible. It's like I said, Polaris is all over it. But then one of the artists they use more than anyone else is Stephen Merritt, who's Magnetic Fields, which is like Magnetic Field songs are in this show. Like, it's a children's show. And I was thinking about how funny it is. Like, they're one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite artists. Magnetic Fields is one of my favorite bands. But it's not like in '93, if you heard it, it's so much like Hard Day's Pete. If you hear a song in a TV show,
sorry,
you like.
That was just the most ADHD stretch of phrases.
Because I didn't realize I wasn't leading to this on purpose. It came organically, and I surprised myself. Because if you hear a song in a TV show, it's not like I could have Googled those lyrics and then found the Magnetic Fields. Like, they didn't become a favorite band of mine until much later. And then I found
famously, it's hard to find music when you're in the 90s. It's the whole freaking plot of the other episode we watched.
Anymore. Like, that's just not an experience you can have these days.
Yeah.
And thank God for it, because so much of my anxiety is quelled now that I know that if I hear a song I like, I'll be able to find it again.
That's literally the whole plot of the show.
That's what I mean.
Episode.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why I got so excited, because I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
But I did find the Magnetic Fields after. But yeah, the music of the show is.
I also love the town pool with like.
That's I think, what did I say? Orange. Yeah, that's Orange Avenue Pool in Cranford.
Yeah, I love the like kids on the diving board. Like, it's just.
And having the like feud with the lifeguard.
Because he was eating in the pool underwater. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a full burger.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just so much surreal like absurdity in this that, again, like I wasn't expecting the tone to be what it was. Like, and I was pleasantly surprised because, you know, I expected more of the tone of Salute Your Shorts here. And instead I got like an acid trip that happened to have kids in it.
Exactly. It's so genuine. And I think I have such a I have so little patience for quirky for the sake of being quirky.
Yeah.
Pete and Pete it just is what it is. It is a weird show because it's the show they wanted to tell. It's not like SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Again, I think SpongeBob is a show that is quirky for the sake of being quirky. Like it. And that's just one example.
Well, the reason, though, for me that it doesn't feel like this is doing that is because there's never... They'll do something like, say, Pete has no money, but he offers Mr. Tasty a huge and evil insect, right? There's never a moment of pause where it's like, huh? You see what we did? Isn't that weird? It just keeps moving. It keeps moving. It's like... It just keeps going and going and going. And there's never a moment where they're like looking to the audience to be like, hey, do you see? We're weird. Look how weird we are. You know?
It's also so sweet, I think, is the other thing.
Yeah.
And there's like not a mean-spirited bone in the show. Like it feels so genuine and so sincere. And I know it feels nostalgic because it already was kind of like like in conversation with its own nostalgia kind of from day one. Like the fact that this episode starts with Big Pete looking back on, and like this story is actually a story being told in a kind of flashback, you know? And so it's hard not to feel that when it was already that, but I think that also makes it just...
Well, and we also talk about camera work a lot because I never stop talking about camera work, but this is really specific. This is like, there's a lot of wide angle. There's a lot of sort of almost distorted looking shots where it's like, you know, the camera is doing the thing for you of being like, this is not normal,
right,
you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of sort of unconventional choppiness, especially for the time, in not just the sound but in the camera work as well. And it's at like weird angles and things that are shot. It's almost like that there's this whole thing about the aesthetic of TikTok now where it's like purposely unaesthetic. It's purposely quote unquote bad because it feels more authentic. And this isn't quite that, but it definitely has the like, we are not trying to make a normal show, so we're not going to do the normal length of a cut or camera angle or focal length. We're going to like play with those things and not be too precious about it. Like you could really see that.
Yeah, and I think that adds to that surrealness that you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Because you're never really grounded totally.
Well, it does that, yeah. Like regardless of what the plot and the dialogue is doing, if you shoot a show that way, it's gonna feel surreal.
Right.
Like you don't even, you know, the other things are there because they're part of it, but it does that on its own.
And yeah, and there are just some things that again just don't, like, I think comparing it to Salute Your Shorts is such a good example where it's like you can feel those sets. Like again, the camp is on location, but it feels like very soundstagey when it's inside, I think. And like, but you wouldn't get a shot like that overhead in the giant parking lot or Artie climbing the water tower and you get that shot below him that like, it just makes it feel so like thoughtful.
And they change it up. Like there's a where they're waiting for Mr. Tasty to come back and he's not coming back and it's hot and they're all like dying for ice cream. It feels like a horror movie. It's shot like a horror movie scene.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There is something there are a few things unsettling about Mr. Tasty, but it like in my head,
I find him unsettling.
Yeah.
In his entirety.
Yeah. In my head, that was me as an adult remembering Mr. Tasty and being like, thinking about that now, that's weird. Going back and watching it, I'm like, oh no, that was baked into the show. Yeah. Like Mr. Tasty is supposed to be like those. Jodie, I'm so glad that I have a photographer here. So story is, it's the end of summer. And the kids are trying to track down Mr. Tasty because at some point they have figured out that they have decided that Mr. Tasty is a lonely man. They know nothing about him.
Yeah, they want to be his friend.
And a big sort of catalyst for this is Ellen works at one of those little photo
booth
kiosks.
Yeah, it's not a booth. It's a, what do they call it? God damn it. This is a specific thing.
Photomat.
Thank you.
Is that right? I made it up, I thought. Okay.
No, it was literally called Photomat. Photomat was like the branded version that would be in the parking lots of the malls.
Gotcha. So Photomat.
Yeah.
And they look at his pictures, which feels unethical to me. That's like a HIPAA violation, but for
that is
Photomats.
Fully illegal.
Yeah, it seems like it would be.
Yeah.
But it's New Jersey and we don't care. But they find that in all of his vacation pictures, he's alone.
Yeah.
And also, horrifyingly, the mask
never takes it off.
Never comes off.
Nope.
Those pictures are incredible. I'm obsessed. Yeah. I'm obsessed with those photos. Who's taking them for him, do you think?
I think he's a really friendly guy, and strangers want to help him with his photography.
In that mask. Do you know who the actor is in the costume? Did you find that out?
Was it the guy that plays Artie?
Yeah, Toby Huss. Yeah. And apparently somebody else, but nobody can remember who the other person was. But the voice is Toby Huss. But we know, like, the implication isn't, I don't think, that Artie is also Mr. Tasty, but it is interesting that he's the one in there.
Yeah, it's his voice. Yeah. I just sent you a link to the Wikipedia about Photomat. Just because there's a picture and you're just like,
look at that.
That's it. That's it.
It's so 90s. It's so
you would just drive up,
80s, and
hand
also
in your film, come back in an hour on your way out of the mall, and your pictures would be in a little envelope.
It's just incredible.
I actually always wanted to work in one.
You should open one.
I should. There's a point where towards the end, Mr. Tasty comes back and he finds them at the photo mat because he wants to pick up his pictures. And he calls her photo gal, Ellen. Yeah. And I just wrote down in my notes, I'm photo gal.
How dare you?
I'm photo gal. That's my identity. I'm photo gal.
I'm surprised that I thought you were going to be like, that was my AOL screen name, photo gal.
Yeah.
I think
Can I just be obvious for a second?
Please.
Mr. Tasty is the spirit of summer that they can't hold on to.
100%.
Yes?
It's the spirit of summer. It's also the spirit of childhood. This whole show, everything about the show, there's no wonder that I have a huge melancholy streak running through me as a 39-year-old person. When this is like, what's that? You wouldn't last. What's the Taylor Swift line?
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't
in the
last
asylum that made me?
Yeah.
Like, every episode of this show is about something fleeting and trying to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna make myself cry. Halloweeny, which is another episode that you haven't seen, but that we talked about on New Jersey is the World, is about Big Pete realizing that he's like. I mean, it is in part about Big Pete realizing that he's too old for Halloween. There's one where little Pete gets grounded. And it's over the 4th of July and he's trying to escape so that he can watch the fireworks, which fuck fireworks. I hate them. But as a child, you understand that because it's like, that's a special thing that only comes around every so often. And if you miss it, you miss it. Like, I understand why Salute Your Shorts, you were not thrilled and it did not connect with you. I think Pete and Pete holds up. I think it is a show as much for adults as it is for kids. Like, it's beautiful.
My notes from the first, so I watched Hard Day's Pete first.
Okay.
And in my notes, it says literally like, this is wild. Pete's personal superhero, ? Artie, the strongest man in the world, ? The next line is this a meditation on memory?
100%.
And then underneath that, I wrote LOL radio waves at night because I used to, when I first moved to Rhode Island, I would at night listen to WFAN on the radio to hear the Mets announcers because it made me feel like I was home.
Oh, you weren't listening to WART though, huh?
No, I was not. I was listening to WFAN, listening to the Mets games. But it was literally like AM radio. You got the signal better at night, which is a thing that people don't even think about anymore.
Right. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. There's so much of that. And that's what I mean is like, I think the reason I'm so genuinely so drawn to, like, I'm a victim of, I am a really susceptible to nostalgia. And I try to be like really aware of this, but I am a sucker for it. And I think it's Pete and Pete's fault. From John Hodgman, his book Vacation Land. Normally, I consider nostalgia to be a toxic impulse. It is the twinned yearning delusion that A, the past was better. It wasn't. And B, it can be recaptured. It can't. That leads at best to bad art, movie versions of old TV shows, and sad dads watching Fox News. At worst, it leads to revisionist, extremist politics, fundamentalist terrorism, and the victory in Appalachia in particular of a narcissist Manhattan cartoon maybe millionaire and cramped up city creep who, if he ever did go up to Rocky Top in real life, would never come down again. And I try to keep that in the back of my mind when I fall into these impulses because I think he's right.
Yeah, but also,
there's
some of us were melancholy children.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I was not a melancholy child because of Pete and Pete. I was just a melancholy child who like took her typewriter up into a tree to type bad poetry. But like,
again, am I miserable? Which came first, the music or the misery? Am I miserable because I listen to pop music or?
But yeah, I mean, everyone has this sort of, as they get older, this melancholy, like nostalgia for childhood. Like we talk about it all the time where it's like, no one was watching us and we could go wherever we wanted. And I, you know, would run across highways to go to the mall alone at 13. And it's like,
exactly.
Is that good? Was that good?
I think so. Yeah, it was. It is fascinating.
Parents were never around. Is that good? Like,
I think about it all the time, like how far from home I would be.
Yeah. Oh my God, I used to walk to Garden State Plaza from my house.
Depending on how early you left in the day.
Yeah.
You could get pretty far before you had to turn around and make it home before the streetlights were on.
It's true.
And so, and I think there's a really smart, apparently Pete and Pete originally was, oh my God, was conceived as a kid Pete and his dog Pete.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think, though, this is so much smarter because you get to, it feels a little bit like the way we talk about our ages being situated on either side of a very
generational
specific
split.
Yeah. And they're only 4 years apart, but they
feel like more than that.
They feel like more than that. And then also they're at two really important points because it's like Big Pete is almost on the other side of childhood. He's like really, it's like he's got a sort of sadness about it because he's on the other side. And Little Pete,
and he's the voiceover for a lot of it.
Exactly.
And so you get that perspective. You're watching Little Pete and his experience, but you're hearing it from the perspective of the older Pete.
And Little Pete is the one he's got like impulse control issues.
Yeah.
He's like angry about it in a lot of ways. He's like always beefing with adults and like isn't ready to.
And the ocean.
And fighting the ocean is so funny and sweet and weird and sad and like, but that's exactly what fighting, becoming an adult is, but he's still young enough that he has that impulse. Also,
but I want to make a point.
Go ahead.
I just want to make a point because I'm realizing, and I don't want to go too crazy with this, but there's I don't want to use the word genius, but I might. There's something kind of genius about watching an experience from two perspectives at the same time.
Totally.
Like you're watching Little Pete have this sort of, like you said, no impulse control, sort of young, crazy, not really grounded version. And then you're hearing about it from the perspective of someone 4 years older, like looking back, going into adulthood, even though they're two different people in the show, but you're getting both perspectives on the same event at the same time.
Yeah. I think the show is so much smarter than it needs to be. I want to read just the Big Pete's monologue at the beginning. How do you know summer is really and truly over? My dad says it's over precisely 1 second after midnight on September 21st. So adult, so matter of fact, so dad. My friend Ellen says it's over the moment you start thinking about whether to buy a 3-ring binder or a spiral notebook for school. I think that's where I fall. It's the second it's out, the like supplies are out at Target,
Yeah. Yep.
But for me, the way I know the summer is a goner is when my brother Pete and Artie, the strongest man in the world, go to the beach. Here's the mistake. They should be going down the shore.
Yeah.
But again, fine. And try to beat up the ocean. And then he says, this is where I get a little, they're not crazy, just angry. Angry that the summer has to end. I know exactly how they feel. Every year it seems like the summer is over about 10 seconds after it started. And it's so smart that, again, this episode is about the summer, but it starts at the end. Their summer is already over when we hear this story. Like, that's what I mean about the show. All of it being, like you said, it's memory, reflection. There's no reason this episode couldn't have started at the beginning of summer and then save this monologue for the end, Yeah.
Yeah. But the whole thing is sort of a look back. Yeah. So a couple of, I think we should probably move on to Hard Days, Pete.
But first we got to talk about Captain Scrummy. Okay,
but there's a couple of things I want to talk about really quick. I just want to put a little spotlight on a few things that felt to me particularly 90s New Jersey. Couple of things. There's a mention of the state mental hospital, which everyone I know.
Yeah. Every state has their own mental hospitals, but I do think they're a real important part of the fabric here in New Jersey.
Yeah, they were a very important part of my teen and early college years. There's that. There is Pete's shirt being so big all the time. Little Pete. He's always in a shirt that's the size of a dress, which is a very 90s young boy thing.
Yeah. They talk about a lot of the clothes in one of the books being vintage and how they're like purposefully dressing them like little grown-ups a lot of the time. Again, it weirdly adds, I think, to that nostalgia kind of look back. Because you're right. It's very 90s because it can't help it because that's when it was made. But they're not in like, nobody's in like hyper colors. Nobody's wearing like, nobody's wearing
more
like
late
LA lights.
Right.
You know, like.
Yeah. But it's the oversized Everything's too big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The 1978 Cutlass Supreme that they dig out of the sand.
Would love to remind everybody my first car was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra. So this was, it's incredible.
That is a thing that I remember about you. And before we get to Captain Scrummy, just the idea that he met Pete's mom because the metal plate in her head triggered his metal detector.
It's so good. You get their dynamic is very different in this episode too. She's like a little annoyed.
Yeah.
By him. They become way more like kind of like almost like they feel much more partners in crimey.
Yeah.
Later, but when he's telling the story and she's helping to tell it, but she's kind of annoyed about it.
Yeah, that's a different tone even than was in the other episode we watched.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about Captain Scrummy? What a name! It's great.
Captain Scrummy's so good.
So good.
Like, and that he looks like a cartoon hobo. He's like got like some like schmutz on his face.
Yeah.
And the way that this show, there's so many, and we'll talk more about them in the next episode. But like I said, like you have, and it's not like, oh, this was before anybody knew who REM and the B-52s were. Like they were huge.
Yeah, when I was in high school, REM was like the biggest band in the world.
Exactly.
And I graduated in 93, which is when the show came out.
Yeah.
He was not known.
No, like people watching that, not me as a child, I didn't know.
Right.
But like that would have been, it's just wild that this show got, and like nobody knew. It's not even like, well, Pete and Pete was the most successful show on television. Of course they wanted to be on it. Like,
no,
this wasn't even a series yet.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. The people who are, Patty Hearst is in an episode of Pete and Pete.
It does feel like the guest stars were not for the actual show's audience. They were for the creators and for like the adults watching it later.
Totally.
Like because no kid knows who any of those people are. No kid knows who Kate Pearson from the B-52s is.
No.
Like, yeah, it's definitely for the writers and the creators and the older audience.
I'll run down a list of cameos later. But I mean, well, just to start, these two. I also, when I was growing up, we didn't have Mr. Slofty in our neighborhood, but we did have some guy who drove a water ice truck.
Oh, of course.
And he was very clearly, he was like probably in my head, he was 90, which means he was probably 60.
Yeah.
But he was very clearly like an old sailor. Like he was an old, leathery man, and he always wore like a navy blue V-neck t-shirt, and he was covered in old sailor tattoos, but he was so wrinkled. And that, I don't know where he got the water ice truck from, but it was like paper cone, 5 flavors.
Nice. We had a classic ice cream truck, but it was not like a branded Mr. Softy. It was just a dude. When I first moved to Rhode Island.
Imagine now, just a dude driving around?
Just a dude. Well, we have them here.
That are just dudes?
Yeah, basically. We have a couple of small companies. They're not just one guy, but like companies where you're like, where'd that come from?
Mm-hmm. Where's your what is it? Safe serve certificate?
Yeah, Safe. When I first moved here, the street that I lived on was the same street that an elementary school was at the end of, and it was a one-way street. And so the ice cream truck would come and just park, like right in front of our house, basically, and like play the song over and over again to try to get all the kids to come out. And the song that truck played was "Oh, and the Saints." But on like that tinny, horrible sound.
Mm-hmm. I can hear it.
It became a running joke between my roommate and I. Every time we'd hear it start coming down the street, we'd be like, "Oh, and the Saints!" Oh no, here we go, all day long. It's just like, yeah. It's not quite as charming, I guess, when you're an adult.
No, but man, was that just what a beautiful siren song for children, you know? You said just thinking of the Jerseyness of it all. You said like the mention of the state hospital, but very specifically, what makes that even more Jersey to me is something we talk about on New Jersey is the World a lot. Is like the cast of characters that make up a New Jersey childhood. And Big Pete says, the other thing I should tell you about Mr. Tasty is that no one knows his true identity. Some people think he escaped from the state mental hospital in Durango Falls, while others are pretty sure. And then they cut to like different people. And one of them is, I I forget who says it. I think it's one of Little Pete's friends, but he's like, I forgot his name, but he used to be married to Cher.
Right.
Like the story. And then Ms. Vanderveer, this blind millionaire who lives on our block, she just calls him Leonard. Like, there are all of these like myths around this man. And probably it's that he's just a sad guy. Like,
right.
I think that's what we did on our summer vacation.
Yeah, I very much appreciated all of the photography references, especially the nostalgic 90s photo booth. Also, Ellen is wearing Kodak colors the whole time. I think it's her outfit that she has to wear to work, but it's like all of those photo booths were in that like yellow, green, red Kodak like color scheme.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's so good. I don't know that it's as good as Hard Day's Pete, though.
So this is the one that was your favorite that we had to include because you wanted to watch it again and talk about it.
Yeah. And I think that it does really speak to, I think you need what we did on our summer vacation to really get Pete and Pete more broadly, because I think this is such a specific episode. Hard Day's Pete.
Is this a prequel to Pump Up the Volume? Is this Hard Harry's origin story?
Exactly. I knew you were going to love the basement radio station. I knew that was all.
Of course I was. It's the first thing I wrote down. It's Pump Up the Volume.
Exactly. We talk so much about
the call-in show.
Yeah. WART. It's so funny that the dad is concerned about the electric bill for that one guitar and amp when Lil Pete is running a full-on radio station in the basement.
Yeah. Famously, dads don't understand how radio stations in the basement work or that they're even there half the time.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But yeah, Lil Pete's got a radio station, WART radio in Wellsville, which I just love. I just love a little kid, like an enterprising little child.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, this episode is about Pete finding his first favorite song, Jodie.
It's also about ADHD.
Oh, he's hyperfixated.
Well, and also they literally say the feeling when, I don't know the exact words, but the feeling when like you find your favorite song and you just want to play it over and over and over and over and over again. I'm like, that's ADHD.
I've been there a million times.
Yeah.
He had a favorite smell and a favorite star and a favorite internal organ, but what he didn't have was a favorite song. He just never cared enough to find one he could call his own. But as he was about to find out, sometimes you don't find a favorite song. Sometimes it finds you.
I also felt like Big Pete's monologue in the beginning of this felt a little bit Ferris Bueller to me. Like, not in the snarkiness of it, but it was just sort of, since I watched this one first, when he started, like, monologuing to camera and he was, like, in a teen boy's room and, like, it just felt like a little...
Life moves pretty fast if you don't slow down. Yeah,
exactly.
You might miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tone that was similar. It was the, like, philosophical teenager. You know? Yeah, speaking to camera.
And so Pete hears his favorite song. It's also just that little like, and they draw attention to it. They like, Little Pete's been one of his little projects is shortcuts in this episode, and so he's got one in mind when he's running late to school.
To Miss Fingerwood's class.
Sid Straw
began her career singing backup for Pat Benatar.
I mean, she's a huge deal. And do you know who the meter reader is?
I don't know if I do.
Marshall Crenshaw? Well, here's where he means the most to our podcast, is he co-wrote Till I Hear It From You for the Empire Records soundtrack along with Gin Blossoms.
Oh.
And then a Jersey connection for Marshall Crenshaw is he's one of the Smithereens, which are a Jersey band, the Smithereens.
Yeah.
I know their singer died years ago, and they have a rotating cast of characters who fill in for him when they play live, and Marshall Crenshaw is one of them.
Nice.
I mean, he's one of the like early voices of like new wave. He's a big it's insane that Little Pete's band has Sid Straw and Marshall Crenshaw in it. Like, it's just a wild show.
Yeah.
So that's the meter reader, Marshall Crenshaw. And so
who comes in during Scab Talk?
He's got one that's shaped like a dump truck. Want to see? Chris Elliott plays a meter reader later. In a different episode. Janine Garofalo plays a teacher. LL Cool J plays a teacher. Selma, and then there are actors who were already huge and musicians who were already huge. It made no sense for them to be on the show. Like, everybody knew who LL Cool J was at this point. But then it's also like Selma Blair, Heather Matarazzo. Like you said, I always say her name wrong. Is it Matarazzo? And I always say Matarazzo.
I always say it wrong too.
Yeah. but then there are people like that who go on to have big careers, who weren't quite at that point yet when Pete and Pete started. But the show was just, like I said, the episode, our first mention of Pete and Pete was probably when we were talking about when we fell in love with Bill Irwin, Mr. Noodle from My Blue Heaven. He's the realtor who when Lil Pete sells his house, he's the realtor who Lil Pete uses to sell their house. And the family who buys the house, the mother is Patty Hearst.
That's wild.
That's crazy. Debbie Harry is in an episode. Like, it's just, the show's absurd. But so Pete hears the song one time. He's obsessed with it. But he can't get this band to show up again. Mm-hmm. And so he's on the hunt for this song. He forms a band with, again, Marshall Crenshaw and Sid Straw.
Yeah.
And they're like trying to make their own music, but it's not good enough for Pete. Marmalade Cream.
Yeah.
Is originally they wanted to use Mississippi Queen.
Oh.
And so they hired this person, Robert Agnello, I guess is how you say his name, to make this sound alike. So Mississippi Queen, Marmalade Cream. Or Mississippi Queen, Marmalade Queen.
Cream. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm leaving it in. It in.
It's all good.
And they liked that so much that they then hired him to write a bunch more stuff. And he did a ton of stuff. All of those like original songs from the Blowholes, like You Painted My World, that duet that Sid Straw and Lil Pete sing together that
was the wedding song or the song of his parents. Yeah.
So sweet.
Yeah.
And then eventually he leaves the band. Oh, and there's like a really sweet, this is also very 90s, where like they're going to have to shut the station down because the electric is too expensive. It's $700, but they come up with a brilliant plan where they'll play any song.
Which they just can do.
Yeah. He didn't know how to play a single instrument a week, 3 days ago. But fine. They raise the money, but it's not enough for Pete. He needs a song. So then he goes to that garage, and I think another show, the band would have been there. Yeah. But it's not it. He has to do, but his friends show up, again, Marshall Crenshaw and Sid Straw, and they play it together.
He had to go where he heard it.
Yeah.
And he had to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what else this reminded me of a little bit, the band part? Emmett Otter.
A little bit, where they all come together and
they all have to raise money.
Yeah.
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 And also the pastiche of a real band, but played by kids. Like when he says, "My daddy was a rattlesnake and my mommy wore a six gun." Is that the drummer that says that? Yeah. And like it's Pete Thunderball Wrigley. Like all of the sort of names.
Yeah, you're so right. Or even just like it's got a little bit of even like Dr. Teeth when you said the like Thunderball
or the River
thing.
Bottom Nightmare Band.
Yeah, exactly. You're so right.
Yeah, 100%.
And I just think I found a video I'll also link to of a like Polaris in 2012, or not Polaris, of the Blowholes in 2012 minus the drummer. It's somebody else playing the drums, playing this song
Amazing.
all together again. So, and it's very sweet.
Yeah.
And Lil Pete, Danny Tamborelli in real life is a musician. So,
yeah.
Yeah. And man, does the music of that feeling of finding your favorite song.
Yeah.
Is just, it's so real. And every time it happens again, where you're like, oh, here's another one that's going to like be with me for a while,
Yeah.
Do you remember your first like favorite song that was your song?
Oh, geez.
Like that you didn't learn from your parents?
I remember my first, so I'm old. I remember my first album that I played nonstop all day long, both sides, I don't know how old I was. I was definitely younger than, I was definitely like a kid. And it was Synchronicity by the Police. I remember having that album and being obsessed with it. There was also I had a couple of records at that time. I had Men at Work. There was a lot of Men at Work songs I really loved. Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Oh, that's good. When I think about
1999,
how
Prince,
obsessed I was with oh God.
Those were my albums.
Yeah, those are good.
Purple Rain.
Any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those were my, like, fully obsessed. Yeah, I can't pinpoint a song, but I can definitely, like, picture my, like, little baby record collection from when I was, like, first getting into music. And it was that, like, time period. Like, what year did Synchronicity come out? The first one. Hold on. I'll find out. Synchronicity 1. 1983. So.
And you would have been
8.
That's so funny because my first albums I bought, I was also 8 years old.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's true for everybody because I'm looking now, just to put it all in context, season 1 of Pete and Pete ended January 16th, 1994. So that is 5 days before my 8th birthday.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, my whole life changed because Green Day Dookie was released.
Yeah.
And then 2 months after that, or I don't know how to do math. And then in May of 94, Weezer's The Blue album was released. They were my first 2 albums. And that all of that happened in the first half of my 8th year.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. One of my very first albums I ever owned was the Thriller double album.
So good.
And that's 82. So 7, 8 years old was when this all kind of started, when I started having my own musical taste.
Right. I definitely got into like Prince and Michael Jackson and stuff through my mom and my aunt. But the first like artists that were mine were, it was Green Day, Weezer, and weirdly the Violent Femmes. I don't know how I found them. They're also, their drummer is in an episode of Pete and Pete because everybody is.
Yeah, my parents definitely did not get me into Michael Jackson. My parents listened to like Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, and I don't know where I found all of this, probably school, but
yeah. It's just interesting that happened literally like weeks. It would have been weeks after Hard Day's Pete, to have like experienced that at the same time.
To have found your song.
There's no, I don't know. I just think it's a direct line from Pete and Pete to me right here. Like there's no, I don't know. It's just everything to me.
Yeah, I can see it. I definitely can. I think this one out of all of, I mean, definitely this one out of all of the like kids geared shows we've watched is the one that I connected to emotionally. Like it's the jersey of it, but it's also the ethos of the 90s, the surrealist angle, the like specific references, like all of that stuff, the nostalgia, all of the things we've been talking about is the reason why, like, by far this would be my pick out of the stuff that we've watched that's in this genre.
Exactly. Yeah. I think
like if this had hit me at the right time of my life, I would have also been obsessed with it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty perfect.
Like just reading the descriptions of some of the shorts. Number 2, freeze tag. Little Pete stays frozen after a night game of stalking freeze tag. Number 4, Peteless. Ellen is hurt when Big Pete insults her Valentine. Then the next one after that, Czechoslovakia. The Petes convince their dad to drive them to Czechoslovakia for secret spy work. Number 6, Pete's theory. Little Pete is convinced that Santa Claus was the first man to swim the English Channel.
It's the best show. It's so good.
Revenge of the Petes. Artie battles the bully known as Hathead. The names of everyone are great.
I know.
Route 34. Big Pete gets a horrible summer job mowing the grass along Route 34.
I wonder what route that would be. What route that actually
46.
is in Jersey. Route 46? Okay.
It would be 46 probably. At least to me. Flossing. The Petes use a new video camera to record their dad as he flosses. Licking. The Petes hide under the bed. It's just like, yeah. Just the descriptions are enough.
Yeah. I know we're wrapping up here. There is one of the later episodes is a school dance episode. Oh my God. Also, you didn't meet her, but Little Pete's best friend is played by Michelle Trachtenberg. Her dad, a recurring character, is Iggy Pop. And he plays such a dad. He's like really silly. And like, I was watching this last night and I was like, it is so wild that if you didn't watch Pete and Pete, you've never seen that side of Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
Like he's just like a silly, goofy dad. He's like trying to get her to dance with him in the episode. That's like one of the he chaperones the dance. She's so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And Luscious Jackson plays the band. in the
Amazing.
episode playing the. Also, my so-called life connection, weirdly, Juliana Hatfield is in.
Yes, I noticed that too.
Yeah, she's also. I don't want to spoil this for our listeners, but she's in the Christmas episode of My So-Called Life.
Yeah, she's the angel.
So you put that angel in quotes, but I read, not having watched it, literal angel. Is that true?
Possibly. Yeah.
We did anything on those shows.
Yeah.
Now that you're as far into Dawson's Creek as you are, like sometimes the show is actually supernatural for some reason.
Everything is weird. Everything is weird now. Yeah. I think I'm in the beginning of season 5. They're going to college. They're going to college. I don't know. We'll see if it. I got a little annoyed at. Are we in Dawson's Corner now? I got a little annoyed at the senior prom episode where everybody decided to work against their own interests in a way that felt a little bit like things are going too well. We just need to fuck it up. Mm-hmm. But
that is my frustration with so many shows. Is that like I know we have to have conflict where people won't watch, but I'm kind of fine when everything's going well on a show. I got enough upheaval in my own life,
right? And it didn't fit the kind of vibe of it that it had been building. It didn't make sense to me specifically that they were like that Pacey was like, I'm going to blow this shit up now. It's like, yes, I get the like my girlfriend's smarter than me. But, like, his whole deal the whole time has been that he is the guy that's cool with that.
Right.
And now suddenly he's not.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think by now, maybe, even if you don't love him as much as I do, you probably get where my love for Pacey comes from. But sometimes they let him continue to make stupid choices that just are really frustrating.
Yeah.
I want to very quickly return to Salute Your Shorts for one quote. We talked about how Steve Slavin seemed like a pretty good guy and like walked out with them, and that was one of the big reasons it wasn't. I found a quote in that book in Slimed, I think, of him talking about working with the kids, and he said, I wouldn't go so far as to say father figure. I think somebody else, it's an oral history, so it's all direct quotes. I think somebody else referred to him as the kid's father figure.
Right.
And then he says, I wouldn't go so far as to say father figure, but I was twice their age, so maybe they thought of me as an older sibling. I definitely looked out for them. Wanted to make sure they were happy. Games for them on set, tutors, making sure they were safe at all times, made sure we covered all the laws we needed to, took care of their parents, made sure they were comfortable and included them in everything. Which I just think is like, it's just sweet because you don't always hear that.
No, that is not the normal 90s TV story for sure.
Mm-hmm. Also, don't ask me what the lyrics are to the theme song. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what they absolutely are. And Mark Mulcahy will not confirm or deny what the actual lyrics are. Even the other band members aren't aware of it. He says, I came close to telling somebody, but I didn't. So I haven't told anybody. Don't feel left out.
That's really funny. I love it. This was really fun.
Yay, I was so glad.
I enjoyed myself. I was like, what is happening? But I like that vibe. It's so specific to childhood, too. Like, just to kind of tie this all in a bow, you know, like, when you are a kid, nothing makes sense.
Right.
Nothing. You have rivalries with random adults that the adults don't know they have a rivalry with you. Like, you have weird characters in your neighborhood that are, like, super important to you, but, like, nobody else knows about. You have, like, these confusing feelings about leaving things behind in childhood. It's just, like, it reflected in its construction the experience of being a kid and a young teenager.
Absolutely. Wow. Really well put, Jodie. I think you're.
Thank you so much.
I think you're totally right.
Thesis statement of this episode of The Watchers. Should we talk about what's next?
Oh boy, this is what all of this has been leading up to.
It's been building to this. I know. I'm excited.
I can't wait to see what you think of this movie.
Me too, because I heard your take on it, and then podcasts that I listened to that talked about it were very mixed. And I think that is a perspective thing, but it also is, you know, IMDb, it's got like a 5.9 out of 10.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, I don't know what it's Rotten Tomatoes, 84% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It is a very specific kind of movie. I know I keep saying jokingly. I keep saying jokingly it's a movie only for me. That's obviously untrue and also unfair because, like I said, it's not a spoiler. Spoiler isn't the right word. Oh God, I don't want to say. Maybe we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
But what am I trying to say?
I don't know.
I can see how a certain kind of person won't connect with this movie.
Totally.
I can also see, I think there are aspects of this movie that people will find frustrating.
Yeah.
And maybe it has to do with, if you keep in mind everything else we've watched and talked about up until this point, that I am just, oh boy, now as I'm saying this, Jodie, I'm starting to grow concerned because I'm much more comfortable with my media feeling ambiguous.
Mm-hmm. I sometimes am not.
Right. I don't need necessarily to feel settled. I think this is such an interesting, gorgeous, cool watch, though. So I think even from a visual standpoint, I think that will be enough for you.
I think so, too. I mean, I haven't seen like clips. I've tried to avoid it ever since we started talking about watching it. But even in like the little preview images that you see online, like the way they use color, I think is going to be super interesting to me. Like that's the first thing I noticed is the way that the use of color in the scenes that we see. I also, I don't know if this is a comparison I'm making in my head without any real knowledge of it being accurate, but like I've watched a lot of sort of like queer British dark television. And I kind of feel like that might be like, not that this is British, but that there's a certain connection in terms of just from what I've seen of little clips.
Can you give me some examples? I just don't.
Yes. So there is a TV show, Please Like Me. I think that's it. Yeah, it's with Josh Thomas. That's the one. Oh my God. It really, really got me.
What's this about?
Okay. It is about 20-something Josh going through a number.
Listeners, I'm editing out the 10 minutes Jodie and I just spent trying to figure it out. So the reason Jodie sounds so excited is because that took us a little while.
Oh
just
my God.
FYI.
I could not remember the name.
To feel out of place.
Also, it's not British, it's Australian.
Well, what are you going to do?
People with accents, whatever.
Yeah.
The plot description is so fucking basic, it's ridiculous. It says 20-something Josh is going through a number of big changes as he navigates his first decade of adulthood. After being dumped by his girlfriend, he comes to the realization that he is gay. It is so much more than that. Oh my God. It's about mental health. It's about queerness. It's about friendship. It's wild.
2013 to 2016.
Right after that, in the description on IMDb, it says, after that shocker, he moves back into the family home to help care for his mother, who has previously attempted suicide. He later moves out into a house with best friend Tom. It's just so, oh my God. Like, I know I use the word tender a little too much when it comes to like queerness, but like yeah. Oh, and Hannah Gadsby shows up in it. It's so good. And it's dark. And a lot of it is like not... Things aren't resolved.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I might check it out.
I think you should. I do think if you do, it might take over your life and you might have to watch all of it, which is hard because there's 4 seasons. I mean, I don't think there's that many episodes per season, but...
One of my podcasts is on a season break right now, so I've got a little extra time.
Yeah, I think because it's not an American show, each season is only like 10 episodes, actually. Okay. And they're short.
Speaking of not having any free versions, I will say, I saw the TV Glow.
Yeah.
Is probably going to cost you about $5, between $5 and $6 on
for the rental. Yeah.
It's new and you're renting it, but it is everywhere: YouTube, Amazon Prime, Fandango, Apple TV. But I think it's well worth a few bucks for the rental.
Yeah, 100%. And just so you know, Please Like Me on Apple TV, you can buy an episode for $3, but you can also buy an entire season for $5.
Okay. Well, that's
so.
I mean,
yeah.
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 Okay.
Oh, I love this description of the pilot. When Josh's girlfriend Claire dumps him and tells him she's pretty sure he's gay, he's mostly worried that the Sunday for two that's just arrived at their table is suddenly pretty humiliating. Josh seeks out his best friend Tom, who is busy at work Googling giraffes and planning to dump his own overbearing girlfriend and Josh's nemesis.
Perfect.
It's so good.
Yeah,
I might rewatch that at some point.
I'll give it a whirl.
I found it very emotional when I watched it.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay.
I
think that's good. I think we did it.
Yeah.
I think we did it.
As you're watching I Saw the TV Glow,
yeah.
Just keep in mind the last 2 years or however long we've been doing this podcast.
Yeah.
But also, I have no idea how long it's been.
I don't either.
But also, really keep in mind the last 3 weeks, I would say.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, next week we will be talking finally about I Saw the TV Glow. So that'll be great.
We're on Instagram at WatchersPodNJ, WatchersPodNJ at Gmail. You're Jodie_Mim.
I am
AQ Andrea Q.
That's also true.
We'll see you.
Where?
In the Pink Opaque.
We'll see you in the Pink Opaque.